Hello class, today is a very important day in the world of art. Today we learn about the different types of art and some of the basic elements and principles of design. Now, I would first like to start off with some of the different applied and visual arts that are very popular in today's society. These include graphic design, photography, drawing, painting, and printmaking. Now, we will get into those different types of art later, but for now we will talk about two of the most important parts of any type of applied or visual art. Those are the elements and principles of design. Now, first are the elements. These are the backbone of any type of artwork you will see. The first one we have is space. Now, space means that we live in a three-dimension world, and it is what objects seem closer and further away. It is how we perceive our depth of reality. The second element is line. Line can be considered as the marks made with a pencil or any other type of writing utensil, or when the edges of the two drawn-out shapes meet. The third element we have is color. Color is the hue of the artwork, as you can see the red and the blue rectangles and squares. And the fourth element we have is balance. Now, balance can either be symmetrical or asymmetrical, and it allows a work to be visually pleasing. Now, the fifth element we have would be shape. And shape is a defined area that stands out in the space of the artwork. They can be overlapped, geometric shapes, or have an organic look to them. These rectangles here are consisted of overlapping and they are geometric. Now, the sixth element is texture. Texture is the surface quality of art. These can include the actual texture such as sandpaper or the implied texture of what it looks like and feels like. And the seventh element we have is form. Form is very simple. It is a three-dimensional object, again, so it can be natural, organic, or geometric. It's any 3D element that we find. And the eighth element is value. Value is the relationship between light and dark on the surface of art. Now that we move on, now I'm going to click on this link, and I would like anyone to raise their hand and tell me what elements of design they see in this work. We can see there's a lot of line, there's a lot of balance in this work. And anyone now? Okay, thank you. Now we are going to move on to the principles of design. And these mix in with the elements to provide a finished aspect to the art. And the first principle we have is unity. Unity is a sense that everything in the work belongs there and it really makes the piece well. The second element we have is harmony. Harmony is the balance of variety and unity. It is sort of a hybrid principle because it really is just how well the variety and unity work amongst the piece. And the third element we have is contrast. And contrast is basically differing elements. It usually allows the viewer to find the focal point very, very quickly and see what stands out amongst the work. And the fourth one we have is repetition. Repetition is the reoccurrence of elements such as color, line, shapes, and value. As you can see, we have some repetition over here. We have the repetition of these white circles with a black outline and then these solid black circles down here. Now, the fifth principle of design we have is variety. Variety is the use of elements that are not similar, and this creates a very unique feeling. The sixth principle we have, is focal point. And focal point is the area of main interest where the eye is led to first. And as you can see amongst these circles, my eye is directly led to this large black circle amongst this one, so that would be the focal point of this art. And the seventh element we have is proportion. Proportion is basically the different size between objects. It's the size between this circle compared to the size between this circle and this small one right here. And now the final principle we have is proximity. Proximity is placing similar objects of work close by each other and objects that are not alike far away from each other. Now I'm going to click on this link, and I would like anyone to raise their hand and tell me what principles of design they see within this art. It's very It's a very nice urban contemporary piece we have here. A lot of bright colors. As you can see, we have repetition with these almost pink clouds, the shape of this, the eyes, the focal point. Now, if anyone can find that, I would say I'm led directly right here in this almost bottom third of this piece. Alright, now that we have seen these, we'll talk about some of the different applied and visual arts. Now, the first one we have is drawing. Drawing is the creation of marks on a surface using one or more multiple mediums, which could include pencil, pen, charcoal, pastels, and markers. Many creative aspects go into drawing, such as the tone, which is the shading of the drawing. This presents a lively effect that makes an image stand out. Perspective is another effect that allows the showing of objects on a flat surface so that the dimensions shrink with distance. Here we have an example by M.C. Escher. It's a very famous drawing. I'm assuming many of you have seen this before. And I think he captured everything very, very well. Now, another visual element that you probably know of is painting. This is a very popular method of applying pigment, or paint, obviously, to a surface. Now, it is normally used with a brush, but it can be done with other objects. Painting has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it has produced some of the most critically acclaimed works we can ever see. Now, if anyone can name this, that's great to hear. It is Van Gogh's Starry Night, and I'm assuming many of you have seen this before. Now, one more visual art that you might not know of is called printmaking. Now, printmaking is the creation of art by literally printing. That makes sense. Two of the main forms of printmaking are relief printing and intaglio printing. Now, relief printing is where the ink goes on the original surface with techniques such as wood graving and linoleum cutting. That is where you have a block of wood and you take a chisel and basically carve something out, and then you roll ink on top of it, and then you press that down, and whatever the ink was on, it appears. And the second type of printing we have is intaglio printing. And intaglio printing is where the ink goes beneath the original surface, and which includes techniques such as engraving and etching. And that would say you have a copper plate and you etch into it and then you roll ink over it. You would then wipe off all the ink, but there would still be ink in the cracks, and when you pressed it, whatever ink was in the cracks would pop out. Here's a great example of a very famous printmaker named Rembrandt, and this was one of his versions of his self-portrait. As you can see, you can get a very loose and almost pencil-like quality to your prints. Now, we'll move on to some applied arts, and the first one we have is graphic design. Graphic design is a growing creative art process that uses computers to solve many design problems. Methods include typography, which is the creation of a message or design using different types of font and text. Interface design is another method, and that is the creation of website-like material. See, as you can see here, I created this. This is a use of typography. The text really helps. It's it's basically appealing. It's eye candy almost. That's really what it is. The different size fonts, it makes the sign and design stand out. I don't know why the eye is much bigger. I just thought it looked very nice, and the colors, it basically makes everything flow well together. Now, one of the last, but definitely not least applied arts is photography. Photography is the process of creating images that are either still or moving. Photography at first was all black and white, and that was known as monochrome. Please remember that word. It still dominates today due to its classic feel. The second we have is color photographs. These began in the mid-19th century and was mass-produced by Polaroid in 1963, quite a long time ago for some of you. Now, digital imaging is one more method, and that took over from the darkroom photography that the first two use. Darkroom photography is when negatives are shot with a camera and then developed by hand using many kinds of chemicals. Digital photographs are all made and edited by a computer. It is very simple to adjust or manipulate digital images, making it much more of a social and friendly pastime. I'm assuming many of you have cameras by now, and you have edited your own pictures. That is basically what it is. Now, we move on to the creative art process. And the first process that I like to use would be brainstorming. Brainstorming is to come up with basically central ideas that relate to whatever art you want to make. Every artist has to brainstorm. It's physically impossible to just magically have art created. Now, the second idea I always do is to sketch out my ideas. It could be anything from words, it could be from minimal drawings, anything on a full-out sketch pad to maybe a restaurant napkin. It's all up to you or wherever you're at. And the next one we have is apply. You have to apply these sketches to the actual art. You have to map out the art, figure out where everything is going to go and how everything is going to work well. And the next one is adjustments. These are after you've created the art, you add adjustments to it. You make it darker, you make it lighter, change the value, change the hue, change the shape. Really just make it how you want it. And then people don't like the next one, but I think it's very important, and that is critique. Now, critiques in art is where you show your art to other people and basically let them have their way with it. They could like it, they could not. Everyone has an opinion about something, and you really want to know what other people think about it to help you maybe adjust it or create new art in the future. And then the final is basically your final project, and you're ready to go hang it up in the gallery. And that is the creative art process. We will discuss that later. And now to finish this presentation up, I will just briefly mention the idea of aesthetics. Aesthetics is the study of beauty in art and the study of the emotional response when viewing art. This idea is all about figuring out why people feel the way they do when they look at certain pieces of artwork. So the next time I show a piece of art, try to understand how you feel and actually why you feel that way. Thank you, and that is all I have today.